Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it is. Welcome to the Alter Your Health podcast, your source of information and inspiration to promote the holistic transformation of your health and the health of our planet. I'm your host, Dr. Benjamin Alter. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be with me here on this episode of the podcast. If it's your first time stopping through, welcome. I hope you enjoy. As always, feel free to subscribe, give a rating, give a review, leave a comment, provide some feedback. It really helps me. Honestly, I say it every episode, but it really does help me. So you can even provide feedback more than once, episode by episode. Let me know what you think. Let me know how this lands. I'm really excited to dive into this conversation with our guest, Dr. André Saine, who is, in my eyes at least, one of the foremost experts, masters of the art and science of homeopathy. And homeopathy, maybe you've heard that word, maybe you know a bit about homeopathy. Maybe if you're listening to this podcast, at least you're open and interested to learning more about homeopathy, which is really excellent. I believe that homeopathy is really poorly understood in our world today, even though it does have a rich and scientific, really grounded history that we talk about in this episode with Dr. Saine. We also talk about, the power of homeopathy and how it actually does create sustainable health from the inside out. Health promoting rather than disease management or symptom suppression, which a lot of pharmaceuticals do. We talk about some of the limitations that homeopathy may have, which, I think the limitations that I see, I don't think André sees these same limitations that I see, but, they may or may not exist. That's the conversation. But before we dive in, I realized that we didn't really set the stage in any way of what the heck homeopathy is and who practices homeopathy. Because I know when I sometimes introduce myself as a naturopathic doctor, a lot of people say, oh yeah, I saw a homeopath once. And a lot of people have confusion of homeopathy versus naturopathy versus acupuncture and Chinese medicine, which is obviously a whole nother topic. But there's a little bit of confusion that I thought I would just take a minute or two to clear out. So in naturopathic medical school, which is, my training, we learn homeopathy. Homeopathy is one of the tools that we have in our toolkit, I like to say. That being said, there are not many naturopathic doctors today in the world who do use homeopathy a lot, or at least as a big part of their practice. I really love homeopathy. I think that it's a powerful modality. It's something that I've studied in depth with Dr. André Saine, one of my teachers. That being said, I focus primarily on lifestyle medicine, nutrition and exercise and mindfulness and all of these things which are foundational. And then on top of that layer of foundation, I think that, and I think Dr. André Saine would agree as we talk about in this conversation, that a homeopathic prescription can be a really, really powerful way to stimulate the vital force, for lack of a better term. And that vital force is the healing force in the body that moves physiology in the direction of health. And it's health promoting, like I said, rather than disease suppressing or symptom managing. So that's really what homeopathy is, and that's how it fits into an alternative healthcare system. It was, as we talk about once again in this conversation, it was really the primary alternative healthcare modality. Homeopathy was for a long, long time. It has a rich history, lots of case studies, lots of papers, lots of epidemiological data, and a lot of that has just simply been covered up, no conspiracy theory or anything like that. However, Dr. André Saine does bring forth an interesting fact about something that's going on to kind of intentionally cover up the power of homeopathy. But I'll let him describe that. But before we dive into this conversation, I thought I would just give Dr. André Saine, who is, like I said, a teacher of mine, a little brief introduction. So Dr. André Saine is a 1982 graduate of the National College of Natural Medicine in Portland, Oregon. That's where I went to school. He is a board certified in homeopathy since 1988 by the Homeopathic Academy of Naturopathic Physicians and has been teaching and lecturing on homeopathy since 1985. And he is considered one of the world's foremost experts on the subject of homeopathy. I would certainly agree with that. And one of the main points of his clinical work is the homeopathic treatment of patients suffering from very serious chronic diseases. In addition to his private practice in Montreal, Canada, he has been dean and main instructor for the postgraduate program of the Canadian Academy of Homeopathy, one of the foremost homeopathy schools in the world since 1986. So Dr. André Saine is a much sought-after homeopathic teacher, holding seminars in Canada, the United States, and all throughout Europe. He is known as a homeopathic scholar based on his in-depth studies of the work of the great masters of the past and based his practice on pure Hahnemannian homeopathy. And Samuel Hahnemann, I will add, is kind of the godfather of homeopathy. And just a fun fact, we actually recorded this conversation, Dr. André Saine and I did, on April 10th, which is Samuel Hahnemann's 264th birthday, we came to figure out. So I'll stop blabbering and I'll dive into this one with our guest, Dr. André Saine.
Because I've been in this since 1976. That's when I first learned about homeopathy, 1976, so 43 years. I've noticed that in 1976, people did not have any negative opinion about homeopathy. Usually they did not know about homeopathy, and if they knew about it, they were usually neutral or slightly positive. The people that were not homeopathic patient, they were slightly positive or neutral, but there was very rarely you would find somebody with negative opinion about homeopathy. But today it's the rule. Not only this, but it's also in naturopathic school now. There's a great proportion of naturopathic students that are poo-pooing homeopathy, and also teachers. So when homeopathy, I was told by students, when homeopathy is mentioned in class or in the clinic, the supervisor in the clinic or the teacher will start to put down homeopathy and maybe even put down the student that brought it up. And if you look at the alternative care movement, homeopathy used to be central before, like 30, 40 years ago, was central to the alternative care movement. And actually, if you look at the history, homeopathy was the first alternative medical care that was developed, because in the 18th century, it was the era 18th and 19th century. It was the era of heroic medicine, and as an alternative, many forms of practice were developed. But in order was homeopathy first, and then there was the hygienic movement that developed in the 1820s. And then hydrotherapy in the 1840s, 50s. And then eventually you add osteopathy, 1870s, and chiropractic, 1890s, and eventually naturopathy that tried to put all of this together. Oh, I forgot also the eclectic movement that started after homeopathy. So if you look, homeopathy was the first alternative movement, and all the other ones follow. And many of them have adopted the language of homeopathy and have adopted the concept of homeopathy. For instance, the concept of vital force is, you will see it in chiropractic, you'll see it in hydrotherapy, you'll see it in osteopathy. The concept of healing from inside out, you will see also in other form of healing. The concept of just the word allopathy is a word that was developed by Hahnemann to say other form of therapy that is not based on the principle of similar. So today you'll hear people say allopathic diagnosis, but they don't understand where it comes from. So homeopathy was really central. Now it's like on the periphery, because if you go to an alternative care conference, you don't even hear about the word homeopathy. It's not even present. If you look at even the naturopathic profession, they have like specialty, let's say like oncology. If you look in their oncology, they don't even talk about homeopathy. They have a conference on naturopathic oncology. Not a word is said about homeopathy. They kind of like it was erased completely from the curriculum, erased from the psyche. It's very interesting because there's a lot of misconception, and greatly it was developed by the skeptic. The skeptic have convinced the public and the scientific community that there are no good study to show the efficacy of homeopathy, which is contrary to the truth. That it's only people that homeopathy survived because of the placebo effect, and they would base their approach that 30 to 40% of people that receive a placebo will respond to a placebo, which is like false information, because this was a concept was developed in the 1950s with a study by Shapiro that was based on a study that he had done, and was called the powerful placebo, not Shapiro, Beaker, the powerful placebo effect. But researcher went back to that research and said this was poor research. It was not accurate. So today the consensus on the placebo effect, has no clinical value. There's no really big outcome from the placebo effect, long-term effect. So that misconception of the 30-40% is not true. So homeopathy survived despite all the bad publicity. In terms of the mechanism, we don't know the mechanism of homeopathy the same way we don't know the mechanism of gravity. However, gravity was well accepted. Never pushed aside because people say, where's the mechanism of gravity? He did not know the mechanism. Actually, he wrote about it, saying it doesn't matter if we don't know the mechanism of gravity. It is a fact. It is a fact, a scientific, a fact that can be scientifically investigated. Same thing with homeopathy. It's a phenomenon of nature. Even though we don't know the mechanism, it should be like gravity, accepted for its value as factual. Now, in terms of what the skeptic don't look at is the incredible amount of epidemiological and clinical data that we have accumulated over 200 years, which is just phenomenal. It's mind-boggling, but they will not look at it because, first of all, one, you need to have access to it. Second, if they had access to it, they will find it extremely voluminous. So where do you begin? And third, they won't even look at it because it cannot work. It's implausible. So why would you look at the data if it's already concluded that it's implausible? So there's no more molecule of the original substance. Therefore, in the mechanistic thinking, it doesn't make sense. But like material science, one of the founder of material science with William Taylor from UCSF, I think, or Berkeley, William Taylor, they both say that people that reject homeopathy because it's beyond avocado's number have no understanding of the research that has been done in the last 40 years in the field of material science. Because just understanding the science of material science, you understand that it's not so much the composition, it's the organization of the molecule that gives property and gives property to a substance. And so in any case, so they don't even look at the data because it's implausible. So their thinking is wrong, and we should be able to demonstrate how wrong they are. And the good thing is we are right, because it's like if somebody would want to prove that airplane cannot fly. We know that airplane can fly. We have flown an airplane. We see them flying. So we're in that position in homeopathy. We treat people and they get better, and it's beyond the placebo effect. There's no doubt about it, because we have animals, children, unconscious people. People are insane. They don't know they're being treated.
And another understanding that I have about the placebo effect is that the placebo effect doesn't last a long time.
Correct.
Homeopathic prescriptions last a long time.
Yeah, the curve of response is completely different. The placebo effect, it's immediate improvement for a short time and a dive and you go back to
Yeah.
baseline. In homeopathy, it's a bit different. You get an aggravation first, then followed by an improvement that is prolonged improvement. But the skeptic don't understand that, and they don't
Yeah.
have studies.
I already pressed record because we've got so much good stuff going, but I want to kind of introduce you a little bit before we kind of dive into the rest of the conversation. So welcome, André Saine. Welcome to the Alter Your Health podcast. Thanks for being here on Hahnemann's birthday, April 10th. How old would he be today, Hahnemann?
He was born in 1755, so he would be 45, 64, 264 years.
264 years old today. All right. Happy birthday, Hahnemann.
In 2005, I was in Meissen, the city of, in 2005, I was in the city where I was born in Germany. And I gave a speech for its 250th anniversary. That would be 14 years ago. So it'll be 264.
Wow. All right. So André Saine, Dr. André Saine, you have been a teacher of mine in the realm of homeopathy and naturopathic medicine in general. And a lot of people respect you in the field of homeopathy. And as we were just kind of talking about, homeopathy is poorly understood because for many reasons, I think. But could you kind of paraphrase again, summarize why you think that homeopathy is poorly understood in our world today, given the extent history that it has had for the last 230 years or so?
Okay, it's because there's a lot of false information about homeopathy, and the false information about homeopathy is very loud, omnipresent in the media. Any newspaper, you will see it, it's present, the New York Times, on television. Every time some commentator have a chance to mention, homeopathy, that's nonsense. It's omnipresent in our culture today that homeopathy is nonsense. So the noise is very prevalent and very loud. And homeopathy, we're a small community compared to the big media. And we have probably not done a good job enough we're so busy treating people that we're not doing a good job enough to show what we're doing is so phenomenal.
Yeah. So before we dive even deeper, could you, how do you like to describe what homeopathy is to a patient or client who maybe is totally unfamiliar? What's some of the words that you use to describe what's going on with the body, just to someone who's totally ignorant and doesn't know anything about homeopathy?
I do all the time. So
yeah.
When you're sick, usually it's your body that is in disharmony. The function are not balanced anymore. Let's say you have a premenstrual symptom, you'll have a mood change, your body will change, you'll have food craving, your bowel movement will change, your sleep will be disturbed. It's like a musical instrument that is not in harmony anymore. And this will happen because your body state of balance was disturbed from many factors. It would be environmental, your lifestyle, the way you think can disturb you, what you eat, and so on. So your genetics. So many factors will lead you to a state of imbalance, because the natural state of the body is a state of health, balance, where you have no symptom, you don't feel anything, you're not anxious, you're not in pain, you don't have nausea, you don't have dizziness, when it's time to rest, you can sleep peacefully. When you wake up, you're full of energy. So that's the normal state of health. But once your body starts to get in a state of imbalance from different stresses, from your lifestyle, from your environment, from your genetics, your susceptibility, then you'll start to have symptoms. And the symptom would be subjective. You feel nausea, you feel tired, you're emotional, and so on. Or it could be objective. You have skin rash, you have asthma, and so on. So you'll have state of imbalance. And homeopathy is based on a law of similar. If you give a substance that can create a state of imbalance that a person is experiencing, and you give that substance, in a microdose or just the energy of that substance, you give it to that person, the body will react to this substance or to this energy carrier, and will react in a healing way. So it'll try to go back to a state of balance. And so homeopathy is unique in the field of alternative medicine because it deals with the inner susceptibility to be sick. It's unique because there's no other method to deal with the susceptibility to be sick in such a universal and central and powerful way. And also the change that we see are permanent. So people will get a reaction. Let's not say permanent because there is life will end at some time, but it will be durable. The change will be durable, and until perhaps the person goes back to a state of stress, imbalance, lifestyle, and therefore they develop infection, they will develop inflammation, they will develop dysfunctional problem like poor sleep, poor digestion. And then when the remedy is given again, there will be a reaction of the organism to go back to a state of balance. This being said, we have to remember, though, that if the primary problem why a person is sick is due to that susceptibility to be sick, homeopathy is the treatment of choice. However, if the primary reason why you're sick is because you're not doing a good, healthy lifestyle, you're doing poor choice for yourself, like going to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning or having 3 jobs. I have seen people that have 2 jobs or 3 jobs and they sleep 1 or 2 hours a night because they want to make ends meet. Well, they don't need a remedy. They need to sleep. They need to have to work less and not to rest. So homeopathy fits when the primary problem is due to a normal level of susceptibility. Yeah. And lifestyle will come in as a primary cause when the lifestyle is the primary factor to be sick.
Yeah, I really appreciate that perspective on homeopathy because, one thing, when I learned homeopathy in school, in naturopathic school, what I really loved is how it addressed a whole person, the psychic state of the person, the physical state of the person and everything. But when I learned homeopathy more deeply with you, I learned how Samuel Hahnemann, who is kind of the godfather of homeopathy, he was really a hygienist, a hygiene physician who worked in the realm of kind of lifestyle medicine, as we would call it today. And I think that a lot of times, in our culture of always desiring a magic pill to fix everything, we can turn to homeopathy as that kind of magic pill. But we have to realize that there's all other lifestyle factors, our diet, our sleep, our stress and everything that influence our sickness. And homeopathy doesn't fix that. Homeopathy does have limitations. So I think that's important to know.
And the concept of Hahnemann in the organ and in the rest of his work, it says causa occasionalis. If there's a causa occasionalis, that means there's a factor that makes you sick that is outside of you, except your thoughts. Your thoughts can make you sick. You look at paragraph 17, Hahnemann talks about that. So if there are factors that makes you sick, you have to address those factors. So if the causa occasionalis is because you have 2 jobs and you're sleeping 1 or 2 hours, this is what needs to be focused on. But if the causa occasionalis is related to a disharmony from within, from maybe epigenetics, so it's from within, then this should be addressed with homeopathy, and the change are just simply wonderful. This being said, also, we have to understand that if somebody has an injury, so there is a force from outside that creates the injury. The body will be put in a state of imbalance at that moment because it's damaged. And giving the remedy there will not remove the cause of the injury, but will help the body to heal itself much, much faster in a paraphysiological way. So that's another aspect of homeopathy. Not only deal with abnormal level of susceptibility, but when the organism is under a stress, let's say an injury, by using homeopathy at that time, you will improve healing response. Wonderful. So we can, that's why the homeopathic surgeon they had so good results, or the obstetrician had so good result, and so very, very little infection with obstetrics, very little maternal deaths or neonatal deaths in homeopathic obstetric. Or the surgeon, they would do major surgery, and still today, without using analgesic after surgery. So most today people will use like a Demerol and things like this, like
Yeah.
opioids to diminish the pain. But with homeopathy, you can control the pain in most of the case.
Wow, that's really,
So
I didn't
anyways,
realize the pain control aspect of homeopathy and surgical. You know,
so
I've
let's say
heard.
when the anesthesia wanes down, the pain starts then. You know, as the anesthesia wears down. So that's when they use the Demerol to decrease it. But the homeopathic surgeon would use the remedy. They didn't need to use opioids. And so therefore people recover much faster. They don't have constipation. They don't have all the side effect of sleepiness, low appetite. With the opioids, they recover much, much faster. So homeopathy has many facets aside from dealing with the susceptibility.
I'm curious, when we're talking about, you know, different causes of disease, one thing that I'm more and more interested in these days is all of the environmental factors, you know, toxins in our world and what, you know, our food supply and everything like that. Do you think that homeopathy is able to kind of bolster someone's innate immune system and healing response in the context of our toxic world today, or do you think it's losing strength,
No, I
the
don't.
homeopathic prescriptions?
No, but it's not the strength of the prescription, is whether the organism that is becoming more and more toxic, let's put it this way, is the capacity to respond less a factor? Certainly, because if you see somebody that is under high dose of opioid, they will not respond to homeopathy. So there is a good example. When the toxic load is very high, let's say with opioids, morphine, there's no response to homeopathy. The organism is numb. But on the other hand, people will be very, very sick with intoxication, like acute state of intoxication, and you give the remedy, they respond very well. Or they'll be very sick with an infection that will produce like very toxic substance, let's say streptolysin, a streptococcal infection. You give the remedy, there's a response right away. So sure, the more a person is toxic, there will be a decreased response, but not enough to prevent homeopathy to be effective. So I don't see a lack of effectivity of homeopathy since I began in 1976. I cannot say I see a difference. Some people will have postulated it, but I don't think they have a good evidence for that. So, however, it's clear that the better is your lifestyle, the better is your response to homeopathy. I'll give you an example about this toxicity. Once I had a patient, well, more than once, but one in particular I'm thinking that was hypersensitive to the environment. To such a point, she was living in a ceramic trailer, which was made of metal, ceramic.
Wow.
And I'm trying to think of the other material that would be in the trailer. There was maybe only ceramic. It's specific for people that are hypersensitive. There's a part of these trailer in outside of a hospital in Texas. And she had been in that trailer for maybe 13 years. I think she was 26 years old, and she had been there since the age of 13. And she had even to wear a mask for oxygen inside the trailer. So the air had to be filtered from outside to filter all the pollens and the dust. And she had to use another mask for herself with oxygen inside the trailer. And I think she had been using the mask for the last 6 years, I think, constantly, 24 hours. Well, I treated this person, and when I started to treat this person in February, and in July she was out of her trailer, she could only wear organic white cotton clothes that was machine wash. It couldn't be dry outside because it would accumulate pollen and dust. So it had to be without soap. So just water and dry with a machine. But by July, she was out. and she was completely free of environment sensitivity. And I assumed that she recovered so quickly because she was not exposed to an environment that was toxic. On the other hand, when you have a person that comes to you that is very sensitive to the environment, you treat them and they're constantly bombarded on a daily basis with element that makes them sick, it will be slower. So that would be a factor, yes. If your environment is toxic or stressful, your response to homeopathy will be slower. If you take the person and you put them in an environment that is more helpful, help producing, and therefore they will respond much faster to homeopathy.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to kind of talk a little bit more about the skeptics and the because it seems like that is a growing, from my perspective at least, it's a growing community. You know, there's more, but then again, I haven't been in the field of homeopathy, of course, nearly as long as you have. So is the skeptic kind of population that are against homeopathy growing, or is it just the voice and the volume that's growing, or am I just becoming more perceptive to it?
Let's put it this way: the group, the loud voice are not many. There are just a certain number of loud voice, but they have convinced a lot of people of their ideas, and therefore there's more people that will vehicle their ideas, that will spread their ideas. Give you an example. There was an article came out about 2 months ago in Journal of Evidence-Based Alternative Medicine, which says homeopathy should be not taught anymore in naturopathic school as a clinical subject. It should just be taught in the context of the placebo effect, how to use the placebo effect. So not more to treat people with sickness. So I inserted the article point by point, but they refused to publish it because, first of all, there was two reviewers on the editorial board. One says it's a very well researched paper, very appropriate, and so on, and give the okay for publication. And the other one, they have a skeptic on their board of editorial board, and it's a very well-known skeptic. His name is Edgar Hearns, and he's probably the one that reviewed my paper. And he wrote I think a 20-page paper to review my paper. And it's always the typical point of the skeptics. So the paper was rejected. So then I submit the paper to another journal, the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Care. They say, listen, the paper is very good, but it should have been published in the original journal. And it's like, we cannot publish it because it should have been published in the original journal where you're criticizing the article. So anyway, it will be published probably elsewhere. But in it, I go point by point over the skeptic ideas, and they don't stand up. But the interesting part is this article was written by one naturopathic student, one naturopathic teacher, and one naturopathic graduate from the same school, from the Canadian School in Toronto, and one psychiatrist who's head of the psychiatry department at University of Toronto. The main author was the psychiatrist, and if you look at the end of the article, it says he was tied to about 15 or 20 different drug companies. So it is within naturopathic school now to throw out homeopathy. So the skeptic idea have spread everywhere, but the people that vehicle these ideas are very, very few. I have a friend that is a medical doctor in Switzerland, and he decided to quit his job as a physician in order to earn a lot of money. He's thinking of you're earning like millions per year, and he has a good plan in order to develop an office to fight the skeptics. Because he found out that the skeptic had an office with 8 full-time journalists that put information on the media all the time, all the media.
Wow.
8 full-time journalists.
That's all their job is, to write articles that make people question homeopathy.
That's correct. And on every media.
And is this company funded by pharmaceutical companies and that sort of thing?
I don't know much about it. I just know that he found out that there was a group of 8 journalists that were full-time against homeopathy. It must be because there was a group, or there is a group, it's called the Skeptics of New England or something like this. I think it's the Skeptic of New England. Anyway, we looked at their income tax return, and it said they had received a $1 million give anonymous. Who gives $1 million anonymous?
The pharmaceutical company. That's
and
who.
and
Yeah.
and I was in a debate here at McGill University twice with Joe Schwartz, who's a professor of chemistry here, and he's very famous in Canada. He's always talking against homeopathy. Every chance he has, he talks against homeopathy. And I had a debate with him, and in my debate, I had 2 slides that I was ready at any time to show to the public. But the subject never came up. If he had said during the debate, because he had said it in other places, that his office, it's called the Office of Science and Society, that was funded, was privately funded, and it's basically they attack alternative medicine with this office. If he had said in the debate that they have no link to the pharmaceutical industry, they have no conflict of interest, I had 2 slides to show. One would be the gift that was given to start the Society for Science and Society was a gift of 7.5 million. So here's the gift that was given by this foundation. It's called not the Trudeau Foundation. It is, I forgot the name now. Anyway, it's the name of a building at McGill. Trottier Foundation. So it was the Trottier Foundation. And the second slide so that was given by the Foundation Trottier. It's a family. And the second slide show that Brian Trottier, who is the founder of the foundation, is also the CEO and founder of a chemotherapy company in Montreal. So the link is very clear.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, I've always felt it was just simply not a fair match between pharmaceuticals and homeopathics. Pharmaceuticals, it's a money-making industry. Homeopathics don't cost any money. I mean, they cost pennies to make, right? So it's like, I mean, what's your perspective on that, on creating a business around a medicine that is essentially like pennies versus thousands, millions, billions of dollars?
Well, I compared this to The Lord of the Ring, one of the movie that I saw, I think maybe in 2014. I'm not sure which number it was, but it was a movie where there was 7 dwarfs left, and there was a big dragon, and the dragon was very, very powerful. But the 7 dwarf is us, is homeopathy. We're very small, but we have the truth, and we're gonna win. According to the myth, we're gonna win. We're gonna slaughter this dragon, and the dragon is very powerful, and is very mean, and we cannot let our vigilance down. We have to be very, very acute about what we do and inform the public about what we do. The thing is, we're gonna win. Why? Because we have the truth.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe a good opportunity to switch to how homeopathy is more powerful than pharmaceutical medications. Because one thing that I know, where I know that homeopathy is shining more recently, is with antibiotic resistance. You know, there's a lot of pharmaceuticals that are simply they're not working anymore. But homeopathics, because they are a true healing modality, they work in the face of that sort of scenario. So could you speak a little bit to how homeopathy rises above what pharmaceutical medications can do? I mean, that there's obviously countless examples, but you know, in your experience, how does homeopathic treatment differ from pharmaceutical management of disease?
Well, pharmaceutical, you treat the symptom. With homeopathy, you deal with the cause. So when you deal with the cause, you have a durable effect. With drugs, you get side effects, and the side effect oftentimes will need more medication. And with homeopathy, there's good side effect. The good side effect is you sleep better. Not only my pain is better, but you sleep better, my moods are better, my energy is better, and everything gets better with homeopathy as a rule. And with the drugs it's a short-term effect. You are dealing, it's symptomatic, it's palliative, It creates side effect. It's very costly. It's dangerous for the environment because all those drugs go back to the environment. So it's really, you could say it's almost like a sociopathic system of treating. And on the long term, you can put an X on them. Like you can put an X on Monsanto. I already heard some specialists says the end of Monsanto is in sight right now. So I would say the end, we can say the end is on site for the drug, but homeopathy has so much advantage, and it will survive. It might go down, and I predicted a downhill of homeopathy already in the early 1990s, but now I can see there's a resurgence, especially in India. When I was at the Liga meeting, Liga is the International League of Homeopathy, homeopathic physician, and they meet every year. And when I was at the Liga meeting in 2017 in Leipzig, every country was talking about, they would give a report and they would say, yes, the number of physicians practicing homeopathy is going down. Our right are less. It's we have no more recruits. We don't have any more young doctors using. We can teach homeopathy anymore too. So it's like very bleak report from European countries, America, Canada, same thing. But India comes up and says, for us, it's completely different. It says the government just announced the foundation of 25 new medical school and university, the foundation. And in October 2018, just a year later, 15 months later, I was at a conference and there was the deputy of research for India for homeopathy. And I asked him, I was sitting at the same table as him, I says, what happened to those 25 new medical schools that the government of India announced in June 2017? He says, well, in September 2018, 1 month ago, they all opened their doors. 25 opened their doors. They have 225,000 practitioners. I think they have 12,000 new practitioner a year, homeopathic practitioner coming to the market. And I asked him why they announced 25 new medical schools. You have so many homeopaths. It's not enough. Homeopathy is so popular. I remember in 2005 when the Lancet announced in the editorial the end of homeopathy. I remember a homeopathic physician from India responded in a letter to the editor, says, "Not in India. It's blooming."
Yeah, I'm curious why you think that in some cultures like India, homeopathy fits in better, or people accept it and respect it more so than in maybe Western cultures like the United States and probably Europe now these days.
I think, first of all, I think in India, the drug company were not very powerful like it was in Europe and in North America. So when Gandhi became in power, Gandhi was a big advocate of homeopathy, and so homeopathy slowly grew in the culture. It was already popular among the people, but it grew more, and then it became official medicine, I think in 1970 in India. And now they're part of a ministry with yoga, Ayurvedic medicine, and Unani medicine. So it's a ministry that minister to those five traditional ways of medicine. So it's official medicine. It's part of the culture now. It's like a bit Switzerland. It's part of the culture because the people of Switzerland voted about 4 or 5 years ago that they want homeopathy part of the healthcare. So now it is in the constitution that they have to pay for homeopathy and help homeopathic education and so on. So now it's part of the culture of Switzerland, and it will stay as long as it's in the constitution. Same thing in India. It's part of the culture now. They won't be able to knock it out.
That's really fascinating, because it seems like it was part of the culture in our culture, maybe, right in the 1800s and early 1900s. Homeopathy was kind of the main, as you were talking about in the beginning, it was the main system of alternative medicine. And, before there were any pharmaceutical companies, there was homeopathy. But it got squashed by this huge, emerging industry that I think it's important for people to realize that the pharmaceutical industry has only been around for, less than 100 years. This is
no more. Yeah, and probably 1880s about, that's when they start with the febrifuge, like aspirin and so on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So 130 years or something like that. It's not homeopathy has a longer history than that. Pharmaceutical medicine just has a more maybe like explosive history, in how it came to the market and how, it sells and continues to sell this quick fix. Yeah. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about homeopathic education, because as I see it, one limitation that homeopathy could have is that it takes years and years to become an expert homeopath. It takes a lot of experience. And, without educators like yourself, there are no homeopaths. Whereas, in the conventional system of, medicine and pharmaceutical prescribing, it's really based on algorithms. There's no skill involved in writing a prescription. There's a lot of skill involved in giving a homeopathic prescription. So I feel like that is potentially one limitation for having a lot of skilled homeopaths, because there's a lot of people, a lot of lay homeopaths who think they know what they're doing, and they're probably not doing any harm. They're probably not, they're not hurting anybody, but they're probably not getting real great results with homeopathy. And obviously we need a skilled practitioner to get great results. So could you speak a little bit to that sort of the context of homeopathic education and, maybe the limitation of training skilled homeopaths in the world?
You need a lot of ingredient to become a good homeopath. One is, first is dedication to want to help people. So if you're dedicated to help people to be healthier, that's the basics. Once you are dedicated, you need to have the basic quality in order to develop the skill, because it's actually, homeopathy is an art. And in German, the word physician is hot, means an artist. So we could say it's a healing art, and homeopathy is one of the ultimate of healing arts in terms you need a lot of skills. And those skills can be developed if you follow, let's say, the roadmap. And the roadmap is the one that was pointed out by Hahnemann in his work. And to give you an example of being able to travel on the trail to become a master of homeopathy, I'll give the example of P.P. Wells, who was a 19th century physician. In 1841, P.P. Wells had been practicing allopathic medicine maybe for 10, 15 years. And he realized that homeopathy was effective, and he wanted to learn homeopathy. So he wanted to go to the Allentown Academy, but the Allentown Academy closed in June. So he couldn't go there. So he wrote one of the founders of the Allentown Academy, which was the first medical school in the world teaching homeopathy. That was in Allentown, Pennsylvania. He wrote to Herring, and he says, "What should I do? I want to learn homeopathy, but the school closed." P.P. Wells was an American. So Herring, who was German, he says, "Learn German. Read all the work of Hahnemann, period." That was it. So P.P. Wells learned German, the old German the old German of Hahnemann, which is so complex today for the young German people that they have difficulty to understand Hahnemann. The young German people today read Hahnemann in English because the German of Hahnemann was too complicated. So there is this American that learned the old German, the Mathematica, the chronic disease, and the organon. He reads all in German, and he practiced all his life from 1841 until he died in 1892, I think. So let's say 94. So 53 years he practiced homeopathy. And he said sometime in the 1880s, 1884, so after 42 years of practice, he says, "I have practiced 42 years. and had as large practice as any person. He was practicing in Brooklyn, New York. He says, I've had as big practice as any practitioner you can have, like the biggest you can have. Now he's this busy, very busy person. And he says, I've never lost a patient with pneumonia. That means he was a skillful practitioner. But how did he become skillful? He just followed the roadmap. He didn't have many teachers. He had one teacher, was Hahnemann. He followed the roadmap of Hahnemann, and he reached the promised land. So if people would cut to the chase and just do the right step, there will be very little detour to go to reach the promised land. And that roadmap is the one that Hahnemann traced, and is the one that was followed by his follower that reached the promised land, like P.P. Wells, Lippe, Heering, Dunham, Nash. They all reached the promised land. They were all very skillful. I would assume if you take 100 naturopathic student who says, I really want to master homeopathy, and you give them the roadmap, only 10%, 10 out of them will reach the promised land.
Oh, I think maybe 2 or 3.
No, if you have 100 though, if you have 100 that really want, they really love
100 that really want it, yeah.
That really want, only 10% will reach the promised land, because it needs dedication. Not everybody has the dedication. Yeah. You really want, but you have the dedication, you have the focus. You need to be focused, and you have the skill also, like the intellectual skill to an observation skill, and also patient in the sense that when you do a case, it's like Sherlock Holmes. You come to the set, a patient that is sick come to your office. It's like there's a history there. It's like a laboratory, and you have to find all what the factor that affected that person. It's like Sherlock Holmes has to put together all the factor that led to this crime. And the same thing with homeopathy. You have to be a good observant. You have to be patient. You have to take all the symptoms one by one. And not everybody can become a great homeopath.
I think that's a really great message that is applicable beyond just studying homeopathy. But we live in this world where things are becoming more and more complicated. There's more and more systems of studying everything, more and more complexities everywhere we look in the world. And I think that we just have to look through all of the complex layers to the foundation, which is the teaching of Hahnemann, and just stay true to that. And that's another thing I really appreciate about your education, that broadly in our world today, to just focus on the truth, the fundamental truth, and not overly complicate things. And that's something that comes through in your teaching for sure, because homeopathy, as well as so many other systems and arts and sciences, things just build layer upon layer upon layer, and we lose sight of what is really going on underneath all these layers of understanding, and just kind of getting to the root of really what's going on, what the intention is, what the pure teachings are, I think is really important, especially as we evolve and there's more information, more ways of interpreting all these kind of things. So I think that's a great message. I'd love to maybe hear some of your latest kind of stories and inspirational stories, and maybe, and on that note, what is kind of your, and I feel kind of funny asking this, but how do you try to convince people that homeopathy works? And I know that you convince people only through your work, only through doing what you do, and you just know that people will come and see it and feel it and resonate it and understand the truth naturally. But beyond that, do you have any ways of kind of showing people how powerful homeopathy is, besides just all the examples of healing stories that you've witnessed and been a part of?
First of all, I don't try to convince people of homeopathy. From a clinical point of view, people come to me because that's where the buck stops. In other words, they don't have no other alternative. So somebody has cancer, and they have a stage 4 cancer, and they're told modern medicine does not have nothing to offer them except palliative care. and they hear a niece, a neighbor, or something say, why don't you try homeopathy? So then they come because we're the last resort. And so these people, I don't try to convince my patient, I don't try to convince because they need help. And they whether it's rational or irrational, they will come in a way, whether they understand it or not. However, if I try to convince the community as a whole or the scientific community about homeopathy, I would say the best way to do it is through epidemiology. The epidemiological data that we have is just mind-boggling, and I'm putting it together slowly, but it's just overwhelming how, first of all, the volume of it, and how clear and convincing it is, how homeopathy saves life during epidemics, decrease greatly not only mortality but morbidity, and it can be used also for preventative purpose. And now during an epidemic, the remedy can be used to prevent people from falling sick. So the epidemiological data, which is not only infectious disease like cholera and all the form of infectious disease, but also it would apply to in mental hospital asylum where homeopathy was practiced versus allopathy. It would apply to obstetrics. It would apply to just general mortality in the population as reported by the Board of Health. There was so many people dying on their homeopathy, so many people dying on their allopathy, or just the report of insurance company. They would give a 10% premium if your doctor was a homeopath, because the chance of you dying was less than if you were treated with allopathy. So it's so convincing when you look at the data. The rest is outside of epidemiology, we're talking a lot about individual case, but individual cases are just fabulous to see the power of homeopathy, how you can help people to restore their health. But it's one case at a time, because homeopathy is individual medicine, and it would be hard. It's hard to do good double-blind study because actually, when you do a double-blind study, you actually testing the skill of the homeopath more than you're testing homeopathy as much. So if the skill of the homeopath is not so good, the outcome will be very poor. So to do a good double-blind study with homeopathy, you need to know what remedy is the person's need, and then you take that group, and then you either give the placebo after them, and you give the prior, the remedy that is active, and then you do crossover. But as far as I know, there's only one study that was done this way, was with children with hyperactivity by Hahnemann in Switzerland. Mm-hmm. However, so that's more difficult to show homeopathy from that aspect, but the epidemiological data is just overwhelmingly convincing.
Yeah, and it sounds like that most of that data is historic.
Well, it's not. It's going on. I mean, Hahnemann published his first result of epidemiology in 1796 during a scarlet fever epidemic in Klunslutter. So 1796, and it's still going on. We have a very, very good report right now from acute Japanese encephalitis going on in India. And that's one of the reasons they got 25 new medical schools, because they could show that they could prevent the condition, and they could treat people during epidemics. And also they had a study where they had patients that had been damaged by with encephalitis that were couldn't be helped by conventional medicine, damaged nervous system, and they were treated with homeopathy. And I think 85% of them show sign of recovery, great recovery, which was remarkable. And that's very convincing for the government. Says, yes, we need more homeopath.
Yeah, and back to the point about, because like I was saying, I think homeopathy is only as powerful as the prescription is accurate. It's like it's either a good prescription or it doesn't work that well. And back to the point of really needing a good homeopath to get these great results, to help the homeopathic movement and blooming in other parts of the world beyond India. Do you think it's a disservice for people to give homeopathic prescriptions without having a good understanding of homeopathy. If people, for example, falling down and just giving arnica over the counter, and having all of these over the counter supplements, chamomile for the crying baby, and all these kind of things that are just keynote prescriptions. Do you think that's a disservice to homeopathy, and homeopathy should be just held for the hands of a skilled homeopath?
No, I think it should be in the hands of the population. It's in other words, folks' medicine. It's fine that mommy gives Johnny arnica because Johnny fell. It's just fine. But mommy shouldn't be aware that when her boys start to have a certain symptom, it's time to consult and not just do self-prescribing. Or if her self-prescribing there's no change quickly. Let's say the child has a high fever, the child is vomiting, the child is not responsive. They have to, you don't let mommy continue to do the care. They have to contact the healthcare practitioner. No, I think it's a bit like grade school. There's grade 1, 2, 3. You learn the alphabet, you learn how to do words, you learn to do sentence and paragraph and books. So same thing, you grow up like this. So the mom is the one that knows a bit the alphabet and can do some words. But when it's time to do a paragraph, she has to go up to the healthcare practitioner.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, because we know that homeopathy is safe. It doesn't interact with pharmaceutical medications. But that being said, would you say that clearly if someone's, dealing with symptoms that are worsening, homeopathy won't harm somebody, but it will keep them from getting better, if that makes sense.
No, it's just that if it's beyond the skill of mom to treat her little son, and the symptoms are starting to be a bit more severe, then it's time to consult. And she can consult with her healthcare practitioner that knows homeopathy. That would be the best. Mm-hmm. Or she can go to the emergency room, but just for diagnosis. And then she reports right away to her practitioner that practices homeopathy.
Yeah. Do you have any recommendations for the general public to, in terms of resources to learn more, and kind of, maybe not from a deep scientific perspective, and maybe not reading the Organon or something like that, but resources that kind of contextualize the use of homeopathy, that would kind of keep people maintaining their open mind to homeopathic medicine?
Yeah, so there was a practitioner that worked in an orphanage, maybe 30 years. Her name is Dorothy Shepherd in England. And she wrote 2 books called Magic of the Minimum Dose and More Magic of the Minimum Dose. So it's her experience of 40 years of practice. And she would have like a page to 1 to 4 page little stories. So people can keep that in their washroom or their bedside, and they can read 1 story a day, and you'll see it's just very quaint and very wonderful. And it gives you a really idea of what the world of homeopathy, which is a wonderful world. Mm-hmm. Like Louis Armstrong would say.
Yeah. And I'd love to. I think we were gonna talk about a few cases that have been recent, and in your experience. I mean, I've heard numerous ones. I'm actually a case of yours. You helped me heal from that spider bite several years ago, which I can tell the audience maybe at another time. But
with pictures.
What's that? Yeah, I'll show the pictures. Really great pictures. But have there been any, phenomenal cases that have been inspiring to you personally in the last couple of years that really just keep you moving forward down this, homeopathic route of mastery in the world that you are?
Well, when I began homeopathy in the early years, like the 70s and 80s, I did my internship in my father's clinic, and he was treating mainly people with autoimmune disease, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, ankylosing spondylitis, etc. So I start I did my internship there, and I worked with him for many years. So I learned a lot how to treat people with autoimmune disease, and it became like basic. At the same time, I was treating every case that I had that had an infection, and I've treated maybe 2 or 3, I don't know how many, let's say 250 cases of patient with pneumonia. So treating a patient with pneumonia is like so easy, or any type of infection is very, very easy, as a rule. So then the next frontier was was most difficult for most homeopaths, and there was 3 conditions that was most difficult for most homeopaths. Would be ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, or neurodegenerative disease like Alzheimer, and cancer, late-stage cancer. So I found a way to treat people with with Parkinson's disease, and very successfully. And so I'm not so much interested in treating these cases because I've done it. So I focus my attention the last few years on patient with cancer, and most of the patient with cancer I see, actually most of the new patient I see, maybe 4 out of 5 are patient with cancer nowadays. And they're usually stage 3 or 4. And this gives me a lot of interest because they're challenging case. And I'm finding a lot of ways to deal with these cases in a wonderful way that I did not know, let's say 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. So right now, I would say this is a really nice field that is developing very nicely. The idea is we're using a law of nature just to find out how to apply this law of nature for different type of state and condition. Because when patient has cancer with stage 4, usually it's like terminal diagnosis, and I can start to turn those cases around, but not the same way as I would be treating a case of pneumonia. It would be different. It's a different way of approaching the patient, and that's what we have to discover and find out. Hahnemann was great for that. Hahnemann was great to, every time he hit a roadblock on the way of developing his skills of being a practitioner, he would ponder upon it, and he would resolve it. So he resolved the problem of potency, posology, venomization. He resolved the problem of chronic disease with his finding a number of remedy, proving a number of remedy that would bring skin eruption. So he did a lot of, he developed a lot of things that he would hit a roadblock. For instance, the chronic disease, it took him 12 years to solve. He wrote, he says, 12 years ago, I start to think about why people getting chronically sick despite being treated with homeopathy. And he says, finally, he resolved it, and he did resolve it.
And I'm assuming that in the context of cancer, or probably any condition, there are things that are happening aside from the homeopathic remedy. There's lifestyle that's being addressed. There's other therapies, or is it just really homeopathy that you're focusing on with cancer patients?
Well, the most important part in treating somebody with cancer is the homeopathy. So that's the first thing. I try to establish which remedy they need, and once we have done this, then we do some supplementary approach. But all patients, I suggest them to eat a vegan diet. All patients, I suggest them that we need to make sure that they sleep well, they do exercise, they take some sun. I have them monitor their sleep. I have them monitor their heart rate variability in some patients that are very stressed. I may have them do some meditation. I will, stress management has become very, very important with patients with cancer, because every time they have a stress, if the pain goes up, the tumors are bigger and so on. So we need to do stress management. So there's a lot of peripheral approach that are used to help people with cancer, and these must be used because it enhance results.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it also makes a lot of sense that you want to establish that remedy, because that remedy is really supporting the vitality of that person as they navigate the sleep and the diet and everything else.
And also, in our group, we have the Mathematica Pura group. We are proving 4 medicine a year now. And the medicine that we've been proving in the last 2 or 3 years are all remedies that have been used for patients with cancer. So now we're developing like a new mathematica, much more accurate, very, very useful for the practitioner. And that's something that makes the practice even easier. For instance, 2 weeks ago, I prescribed a remedy to a patient that has stage 4 cancer, and with many metastases, maybe like 20 site of metastasis. And I had just taught the new remedy, this new remedy, 2 days before I saw her, or a week before. I had given a webinar on this remedy, and I could see the remedy as I was taking her case. It was exactly that remedy, even though it's not a well-known remedy. But the fact that we had put the symptom together, it was just beautiful. So I have a report from her. She's like 75, I think that was her word, 75% better overall in terms of energy, in terms of pain, in terms of the sensitivity of the tumor. Everything is 75% better all around. But that's in 1 week. Because by the time she received the remedy, by the time she took it, it was only like 10 days. And so in 10 days, there's 75% improvement in her general sense of well-being. Pain is down. She says she's able now to, before, like 10 days ago, before she started the remedy 10 days ago, she has to think of every move. Like she says, okay, now I'm going to go to the washroom, and then I'm going to have to rest. And then when I come back, I will have to rest in between, like between the washroom and the bedroom. I'll have to rest in the hallway in that chair. So she would think. Now she says, I go and I don't even think about it. I just do my day now. And I even can go walking outside. Before, she couldn't even walk anymore. Now she could only go to the washroom, and that's it. But that's only in 10 days. Why? Because the pain is down and she's more functional and the energy's up. And the appetite, she had no appetite, 1 out of 10. Now appetite is like, she says, almost 30%, 7 out of 10. So she went from 1 to 10. That means when they have an appetite of 1 and they're stage 4 cancer, that means they're going into cachexia, and that's a downhill. But she's just coming out of it because the remedy was so accurate. But this remedy, nobody would have prescribed this remedy ever, unless you knew the mathematica. And to put the material together was just done the week before. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. The mathematica is elusive.
Yeah, sounds like a real, blessing for this individual, that it was the timing of it all, for her. Because like you're saying, yeah,
it happens all the time now, because we do the provings, we spread the proving among our group, and people are returning cases. Oh, I will have an email. Oh, I had a so fabulous case with this remedy, the new remedy that we just proved, that then our mathematica becomes really sharp tools for treating these kind of patients.
Yeah. One thing that came to my mind earlier that I meant to bring up was the concept of proving. As it was taught to me initially, provings are or were the first placebo-controlled sort of trial. Is that correct? Like the way that provings are set up, they're given in a kind of double-blind way, and because a lot of people, criticize homeopathy for being unscientific, but as far as I know, our scientific knowledge and practice as it is today has been birthed from homeopathy. Homeopathy was actually the way that scientific experiments are done today, are based on the homeopathic kind of law of proving. Is that correct?
Sure. And Joel Shepard is a medical doctor that practiced homeopathy since the early 1970s in the Chicago area. He used to teach Organon at the University of Health Science, National University of Health Science, that have a naturopathic program there. And he used to teach the Organon there. I think he's retired now. He's probably in his late 70s. And he wrote an article in the Simillimum, which is the journal of the Homeopathic Academy of Naturopathic Physicians, on homeopathy, the pure science of homeopathy. And he goes back to Goethe, the way that Gertie made science through observation and so on, and he compares it to the development of homeopathy. Homeopathy is pure science. If any scientist want to look at how homeopathy was developed, they will see this is pure scientific way. So if you want, I can send you that article by Joel Shepard.
Yeah, I would love if you maybe send a few of your favorite resources that you like to. You talked about another paper that you compiled to kind of send to the skeptics, but they didn't receive it or publish it or something.
I can send it to you.
Yeah, I'd love to see that as well. But yeah,
don't publish it because it was submitted to a journal, so you can read it.
Oh,
but
okay. Okay. I won't put it on the website.
You can take some extract of it. Take some
Okay.
extract if you want. You can until it's published. Because
Okay.
if the publisher finds out it's already on the web, they won't publish it.
Okay. Yeah, of course. Good to know. But yeah, this has been, an enlightening, inspiring conversation for me. Like I said, early on, thank you for the education you've provided me and that you've provided so many, and for people to learn more about, your practice, your school, what you're doing. Where can people find that kind of stuff?
www.homeopathy.ca.
CA, Canada. You're in Montreal.
Yeah, CA is not for cancer. It's not for California. It's for Canada on the web. So it's homeopathy.ca, and there they will find maybe what's the most important for people. They would say article. There will be a section that says article, and there's a lot of article there, not only written by me, also by good homeopaths like P.P. Wells. I think I put an article there by P.P. Wells. So there's some very, very good article. If you look at the content of the article, I'm sure it's over 1,000 pages. So there's a lot of reading people can do. It's excellent reading. And also, if they're interested in the Mathematica project, we have a website for that. And they can go to purehomeopathy.org, and they will have information about the Mathematica project, Mathematica Pura project, homeopathy.org.
And how about, do you have any?
Purehomeopathy.org, purehomeopathy.org.
Do you have any recommendations for people out there who are, maybe seeking a good homeopath that to work with? How does one find a good reputable homeopath in this world?
It's hard to know because address don't or how popular somebody doesn't equate to skills. You could have a very skillful practitioner nobody knows about, like Steve Albin, for instance. He's a colleague of mine. He graduated from National College in 1976, and he's practicing in Salem, Oregon, not far from Portland. Do you know of Steve Albin?
Haven't heard his name.
Never heard his name, but you were 4 years. You're 4 years at 60 miles away, and here is this guy is very, very skillful practitioner nobody knows about. So it's not because somebody has a name out there that they're going to be very skillful. So maybe what people can do is they can look for a member of the Homeopathic Academy of Naturopathic Physicians. So they have a website and they will have practitioners. So that would be a possibility. Other possibility would be to consult the American Institute of Homeopathy and look for one of their practitioners. So at the very least, at least they will have somebody with a certain level of qualification, either the Homeopathic Academy of Naturopathic Physicians or the American Institute of Homeopathy. They both have website and they both will refer you to practitioner. That's for North America.
Yeah, I think that's important because I think that's a really good point about, popularity not equaling skill. There's a lot of people who are popular in this world who say nice things and look pretty and doing all the things, but they don't maybe have that skill. So focusing on the skill, especially when it comes to homeopathy, but I think all aspects of natural medicine and healing. Well, thank you, Dr. André Saine. Any kind of last words of wisdom or inspiration for listeners on this episode? On the podcast?
Yes, I would say last word. Homeopathy is very, very important for the health of your family and your community from many point of view. And it's important that you pay attention to homeopathy, see what's word about it. And if you see it's word, support it. Support it in many ways first of all, by having your family to get that kind of treatment, and just educate yourself by reading about homeopathy. And I would suggest like Dorothy Shepard's wonderful book, Magic of the Minimum Dose and More Magic. This would be a great step forward as for education, and also to help families to know where homeopathy fits in the healthcare system.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Dr. Saine, and peace and love until next time.